Today we're going to be talking about multiplying polynomials together. And let's get started with this first example. We are asked to multiply 6y to the third times 3y to the fifth. And basically what you're going to be doing is just multiplying the 6 and 3 together to get 18. And then y to the 3 times y to the fifth, we just add the exponents together to get y to the 8th. So let's go on to the next problem, see what happens here. We have 3mn squared times 9m squared n. If it helps you to put exponents of 1 on the m and n, go right ahead. Again, we're going to just multiply the 3 and the 9, so we get 27. M to the first times m to the second, we add the exponents to get m to the third, and n to the second times n to the first, we get n to the third power. So we end up with 27 m to the third n to the third. Now this next one, what we're going to do is use our distributive property, which we've had a lot of practice doing, and we're going to distribute the multiplication of the 4 to each term. So we get 4 times 3x squared gives us 12x squared. 4 times 4x gives us 16x. And 4 times negative 8 gives us negative 32. So we get 12x squared plus 16x minus 32. Moving on to the next one. Again, we're still using the distributive property. You can put exponents of 1 on these variables since they don't have exponents listed. And we're going to multiply 6pq times 2p. Now 6 times 2 gives us 12. P to the first times p to the first, add the exponents, we get p to the second. There is no q in next to the 2p, so we're just going to write down that q from the 6pq. And now we're going to say 6pq times q to the first. Well, and actually it's going to be negative, so we have negative 6p. Q to the first times q to the first gives you q to the second. So we end up with 12p squared q minus 6p q squared. Next, go ahead and try this one. We're going to use the distributive property, and we have to say 1/2 x squared y times 6xy. So and again, if you want to put in the exponents of 1, go ahead. So 1/2 of 6, of course, gives us 3. X squared times x to the first is x to the third. Y to the first times y to the first is y to the second. 1/2 x squared y times 8x squared y squared. 1/2 times 8 is 4. X squared times x squared is x to the fourth. Y to the first times y to the second is y to the third. So we end up with 3x to the third y squared plus 4x to the fourth y to the third. Those are not like terms, so we can't combine them. Next, we have two binomials we're going to multiply together, and we are going to use a method called FOIL. Now, FOIL is an acronym for something. F stands for first, O stands for outer, I stands for inner, and L stands for last. So the first letters of each word gives us the acronym FOIL. And this works for binomials when you're multiplying them together. So we're going to multiply the first terms together first. So there's your F. S times S gives us S squared. Then we're going to multiply the outer terms together. S times negative 2, there's the O for outer. S times negative 2 is negative 2S. Now we multiply the inner terms. There's your I. 4 times S gives you positive 4S. And now we're going to multiply the last terms. 4 times negative 2 is negative 8. Combine any like terms that you have, which is negative 2S plus 4S, and we end up with S squared plus 2S minus 8. Okay, basically, you've probably noticed this. This is just repeated applications of the distributive property here. Um, we have x minus 4 squared. Be careful. You just can't square the x and square the 4. You actually are going to have to write this out as x minus 4 times x minus 4 and use our FOIL method. So let's start with the first terms. X times x gives us x squared. That's our first term. X times negative 4, those are our outer terms, gives us negative 4x. Negative 4 times x is negative 4x. Those are the inner terms. And negative 4 times negative 4 is positive 16. Those are the last terms that we just multiplied. Uh, Add together or combine our like terms in the middle. So we have x squared minus 8x plus 16. All right, so now moving on to the next page. Let's try some more problems. You have 8m squared minus n times m squared minus 3n. Let's go ahead and multiply our first terms together. 8m squared times m squared gives you 8m to the fourth. Add those exponents. 8m squared times negative 3n. 8 times negative 3 is negative 24. And m squared times n just gives you m squared n. The inner terms, negative n times m squared gives you minus m squared n. Usually I write the variables in alphabetical order. You probably noticed that. Negative n times negative 3n. Negative times a negative is a positive, so we get positive 3n squared. We do have some like terms in the middle. We have negative 24m squared n minus m squared n, which gives us negative 25m squared n. And we'll bring down the terms on each end. So we have 8m to the fourth minus 25m squared n plus 3n squared for our solution. Now let's go to the next one. With this one, we are multiplying a binomial times a trinomial. So we are just going to repeatedly distribute the multiplication of each term throughout this problem. So we're going to say x times x squared is x to the third. X times 4x is 4x squared. X times negative 6 is negative 6x. Negative 5x squared, negative 5 times x squared is negative 5x squared. Negative 5 times 4x is negative 20x. And negative 5 times negative 6 is positive 30. Go ahead and combine your like terms, which we've got 4x squared minus 5x squared. That gives us negative 1x squared, or just negative x squared. We have negative 6x minus 20x. That gives us negative 26x. Bring down the rest of the terms that we can't combine, and we get x cubed minus 1x squared minus 26x plus 30. Try it again with this problem. Same type of problem. We're going to distribute repeatedly. It never hurts to draw in these lines. So let's start. I'm actually going to write this underneath. 2x times x squared gives us 2x cubed. 2x times 4x gives us 8x squared. 2x times negative 6 gives us negative 12x. Let's now go with the distribution of the negative 5. Negative 5 times x squared, it gives you negative 5x squared. Negative 5 times 4x gives you negative 20x. And negative 5 times negative 6 gives you positive 30. Combine your like terms. We have positive 8x squared minus 5x squared. That gives us 3x squared. We also have negative 12x and negative 20x. Combine those, we get negative 32x. Bring down the other terms that can't be combined. This was a positive, so we'll put a plus there. And we get 2x cubed plus 3x squared minus 32x plus 30 as our final answer. Okay, so everybody, I hope, is doing great so far. Let's go on to our last page of problems. You are given the fact that the width of a rectangular prism is 3 feet less than the height, and the length of the prism is 4 feet more than the height. Okay, so let's write down what we know. The width is 3 feet less than the height. Let's say the height is h. So if it's 3 feet less, it's h minus 3. The length is 4 feet more than the height. So if the height is h, we're going to have the length as h plus 4. Okay, let's think about what a prism looks like here. Let's see if I can draw one. Give you an idea. This isn't perfect, but gives you an idea of what it's going to look like. It's like a box. There you go. All right, so if we're looking at length, width, and height, we're probably looking at something like this. Here's your length, here's your width, here's your height. And it said write a polynomial that represents the area of the base. Well, the area of the base is just length times width. So if we take length times width, according to what we've got written up here, we're going to say h minus 3 times h plus 4, just substituting that in for length and width. And actually, I probably should write it in reverse order because that's just exactly how I wrote it. It really doesn't matter. So we're going to say h plus 4 times h minus 3. Same, you get the same result either way. Okay, so now we're going to use our FOIL method. We're just going to repeatedly distribute. H times h gives you h squared. H times negative 3 is negative 3h. 4 times h is positive 4h. And 4 times negative 3 is negative 12. So continuing with that, we have h squared, combine our like terms in the middle, plus 1h, or just h, minus 12. And so this is the area, and area is always measured in square units, and we're talking feet here if you remember from the beginning. So we've got h squared plus h minus 12 square feet. We probably should put that in parentheses so we know that all of it represents square feet. Now it says find the area of the base when the height is 5 feet. So that's when h is 5. All right, so we're going to use our formula that we just came up with, h squared plus h minus 12, our expression, and we're going to substitute 5 in place of h. So we've got 5 squared, which is 25, plus 5, minus 12. 25 plus 5 is 30. 30 minus 12 gives you 18 square feet. So that is the area of the base if the height of the prism is 5 feet. Thank you very much for joining me.